and I don't know, but I think, into chapter 3 or something, or not chapter 3, chapter 4, and I noticed that it just decided to end the live. I looked back in the live to see what happened, and it decided to uh end in the middle of chapter 3 when, like, right after Rusty had his battle with Longtail. So I don't know what happened, but we're gonna be continuing on with chapter 3 and 4, and let's just hope something like that doesn't happen. Even the audio was pretty messed up. I don't know what happened, so yeah. Anyway, Warrior Cats contains blood, violence, and death. If you are sensitive to any of this, I honestly suggest that you get out of its live, because believe me, it contains it. It very much contains it. Anyway, last time in Warrior Cats Into the Wild, Longtail and Rusty had a fight to show that Rusty isn't just a kitty pet. He has proved to his clanmates that he sure can protect his clanmates, even if he is a kitty pet. Anyway, let's continue on. Busar approached Rusty and placed a shredded collar on the ground in front of him. She touched his ear gently with her nose. "You look like a brand of fire in the sunlight," she murmured. Her eyes flashed briefly, as if her words had more meaning for her than Rusty knew. "You have fought well." Then she turned to her clan and announced, "From this day forward, until he has earned his warrior name, this apprentice will be known as Firepaw, in honor for his flame-colored pelts." She stepped back, and with the other cats waited silently for his next move. Without hesitating, Rusty turned and kicked dust and grass over his collar, as though burying his dirt. Longtail growled and limped out of the clearing toward a fern shadow corner. The cats split into groups, murmuring to each other excitedly. "Hey, Firepaw!" Rusty heard Greypaw's friendly voice behind him. Firepaw! A thrill of pride surged through him at the sound of his new name. He turned to greet the gray apprentice with a welcoming sniff. "Great fight, Firepaw," mewed Greypaw. "Especially for a kitty pet. Longtail's a warrior, although he only finished his training 2 moons ago. That scar you left on his ear won't let him forget you in a hurry. You spilled his good looks, that's for sure." "Thanks, Greypaw." "Bleh." "Thanks, Greypaw," Firepaw replied. "You put up quite a fight. My God, what is going on?" "He put up quite a fight, though." He he licked his front paw and began to wipe the clean, deep scratch that stung above his eye. As he watched, he heard his new name again, echoing among the meows of the cats. "Firepaw! Hey, Firepaw! Welcome, young Firepaw." Firepaw closed his eyes for a moment and let the voices wash over him. "Good name, too," Greypaw mewed approvingly, jolting him awake. Firepaw looked around. Where did Longtail creep off to? I think he was heading toward the Sputterleaf's den. Greypaw tipped his head toward the fern-enclosed corner Longtail disappeared into. "She's our medicine cat. Not bad looking either. Younger and a lot prettier than most." A low growl next to two cats stopped Greypaw mid-speech. They both turned, and Firepaw recognized the powerful gray tabby who had sat behind Greypaw earlier. "Darkstripe," mewed Greypaw, dipping his head respectfully. The Slick Tom looked at Firepaw for a moment. "Lucky your collar snapped when it did. Longtail's a young warrior, but I can't imagine being beaten by a kitty pet." He spat the word kitty pet scornfully, then turned and stalked off. "Now, Darkstripe," Greypaw hissed to Firepaw under his breath, "is neither young not pretty." Firepaw was about to agree with his new friend when he was interrupted by a warning yowl from an old gray cat sitting at the edge of the clearing. "Small Ear smells oh my fucking God. Small Ear smells trouble," Graypaw meowed, immediately alert. Firepaw had barely time to look around before a young cat crashed through the bushes and into camp. He was skinny, and apart from the white tip of his long, thin tail, jet black from head to toe. Graypaw gasped. "That's Ravenpaw! Why is he alone? Where's 𝓧𝓁-𝓂?" Firepaw looked at Ravenpaw staggering across the floor of the clearing. He was panting heavily, his coat was ruffled and dusty, and his eyes were wild with fear. "Who are Ravenpaw and 𝓧𝓁-𝓂?" Firepaw whispered to Graypaw, as several other cats raced past him to greet the new arrival. "Ravenpaw's an apprentice. 𝓧𝓁-𝓂's his mentor," Graypaw explained quickly. "Ravenpaw went out with 𝓧𝓁-𝓂 and Redtail at sunrise on a mission against 𝓧𝓁-𝓁. That lucky furball." "Redtail?" Firepaw echoed, thoroughly confused by these new names. "Bluestar's deputy," hissed Graypaw. "But why on earth has Ravenpaw come back alone?" he added to himself. He lifted his head to listen as Bluestar stepped forward. "Ravenpaw?" The she-cat spoke calmly, but a look of worry clouded her eyes. The other cats drew back, curling their lips in anxiety. "What has happened?" Bluestar jumped onto the high rock and looked down at the trembling cat. "Speak, Ravenpaw!" Ravenpaw was still struggling for breath, and his sides heaved fitfully while the dust around him turned red with blood, but he still managed to scramble up onto the high rock and stand beside Bluestar. He turned to the crowd of eager faces that surrounded him and summoned enough strength to declare, "Redtail is dead!" Chapter 4. Shocked yells rose from the clan cats and echoed through the forest. Ravenpaw staggered slightly. His right foreleg glistened wet with blood that flowed from the deep gash in his shoulder. "We met 5 River Clan warriors beside the stream, not far from the Sunning Rocks," he went on shakingly. "𝓧𝓁 was among them." "𝓧𝓁!" Graypaw gasped beside Firepaw. "He's the deputy of River Clan. He's one of the greatest warriors in the forest. Lucky Ravenpaw. Wish it could have been me. I'd have really—" Graypaw was silenced by a fierce glance from the old gray Tom who had first sensed Ravenpaw's return. Firepaw turned his attention back to Ravenpaw. "Redtail warned 𝓧𝓁 to keep his hunting parties not out of ThunderClan territory. He said the next River Clan warrior to be caught in ThunderClan territory would be killed, but 𝓧𝓁 would not back down. He said his clan had to be fed, whatever we threatened." Ravenpaw paused to wheeze for breath. His wound was still bleeding heavily. He stood awkwardly to keep weight off of his shoulder. That's when the River Clan cats attacked. It was hard to see what was happening. The fighting was vicious. I saw 𝓧𝓁 had Redtail pinned to the ground, but then Redtail— Suddenly, Ravenpaw's eyes rolled back in his head, and he lurched sideways, half scrambling, half falling. He slithered off the high rock and collapsed onto the ground below. A ginger queen bounded toward him and crouched at his side. She licked his cheek briefly and called out, "Spotted Leaf!" One of the fern-shaded corner trotted the pretty tortoiseshell Firepaw had noticed sitting beside Graypaw earlier. She hurried over to Ravenpaw and mewed for the queen to stand back. Then she used her small pink nose to roll the apprentice over so that she could take a good look at the wound. She glanced up and meowed. "It's all right, Goldenflower. His wounds aren't fatal, but I'll need to fetch some cobwebs to stop the bleeding." As Spotted Leaf sprinted back to her den, the hushed silence in the clearing was broken by a mournful howl. All eyes turned to the direction it had come from. A massive dark brown tabby staggered through the gorse tunnel. Between his sharp teeth, the warrior held not prey, but the lifeless body of another cat. He dragged the tattered creature into the center of the clearing. Firepaw craned his neck and glimpsed a flash of bright ginger tail, hanging limply into the dust. Shock rippled through the clan like a chill breeze. Beside Firepaw, Greypaw dropped into a crouch as grief swept over him. Redtail! How did this happen, Tigerclaw? Demanded Bluestar from a position on the high rock. Tigerclaw let the scruff of Redtail's neck fall from his mouth. He looked steadily back at Bluestar. He died with honor, struck down by Oakhart. I couldn't save him, but I managed to take Oakhart's life while he still was gloating over his victory. Tigerclaw's voice was strong and deep. Redtail's death was not in vain, for I doubt we'll see River Clan hunters in our territory again. Firepaw glanced at Greypaw. The apprentice's eyes were dark with sadness. After a moment's pause, several cats moved forward to lick Redtail's bedraggled fur. As they groomed, they purred hushed voices to the dead warrior. Firepaw whispered into Greypaw's ear. What are they doing? Greypaw didn't take his eyes off the dead cat as he replied. His spirit may have left to join StarClan, but the clan will share tongues with Redtail one last time. StarClan? Firepaw echoed. It's a tribe of heavenly warriors that watches over the clan cats. You can see them in Silverpelt. Firepaw looked confused, so Greypaw explained. Silverpelt is that thick band of stars you see each night stretching across the sky. Each star is a StarClan warrior. Redtail will be among them tonight. Firepaw nodded, and Greypaw stepped forward to share tongues with the dead deputy. Bluestar remained silent while the first cats came to pay their respects to Redtail. Now she leaped down from the high rock and walked slowly toward Redtail's body. The other cats retreated and watched their leader crouch down as she shared tongues with her old comrade one last time. As she had finished, she raised her head and spoke. Her voice was low and thick with grief, and the clan listened in silence. Redtail was a brave warrior. His loyalty to ThunderClan could never be doubted. I always relied on his judgment, for it bore witness to the needs of the clan, and was never swayed by self-interest or pride. He would have been a fine leader. Then she lowered herself onto her belly, her head bowed, her paws stretched neatly before her, and silently she grieved for a lost friend. Several other cats came and lay down beside her, their bowed heads and hunched backs echoing her mournful pose. Ay, ay, ay. Firepaw watched. He had not known Redtail, but he couldn't help feeling moved as he witnessed the clan mourn. Greypaw came and stood beside him again. Dustpaw would be sad, he remarked. Dustpaw? Redtail's apprentice, the brown-striped tabby over there. I wonder who his new mentor will be. Firepaw glanced over at the small Tom who squatted near Redtail's body, staring unseeing at the ground. Firepaw looked past him to the clan leader. How long will Bluestar sit with him? He asked. Probably the whole night, replied Greypaw. Redtail was her deputy for many, many moons. She won't let him go too quickly. He was one of the best warriors. Not as big and powerful as Tigerclaw or Lionheart, but quick and clever. Firepaw looked at Tigerclaw, admiring the strength that swelled in his powerful muscles and broad head. His massive body showed signs of his warrior life. One of his ears was split into a deep V shape, and a thick scar sliced the bridge of his nose. Suddenly, Tigerclaw stood up and stalked over to Ravenpaw. Spiderleaf was crouching beside Tigerclaw's wounded apprentice, using her teeth and front claws to press wads of cobweb onto the shoulder wound. Firepaw leaned toward Greypaw and asked, "What's Spiderleaf doing?" "Stopping the bleeding. It looks like a nasty cut, and Ravenpaw seemed really shaken up. He's always been a bit jumpy, but I've never seen him this bad before. Let's go and see if he's woken up yet." They made their way through the grieving cats toward the spot where Ravenpaw lay and settled themselves a respectful distance away to wait until 𝓧𝓁 had finished speaking. "So, Spotted Leaf," 𝓧𝓁 addressed the tortoiseshell with a confident meow. "How is he? Do you think you can save him? I spent a lot of time training him up, and I don't want my efforts to be wasted at the first battle." Spotted Leaf didn't look up from her patient as she replied, "Yes, a pity if, after all your valuable training, he dies in his first battle." Firepaw could hear a teasing purr in her soft mew. "Will he live? Will he live?" 𝓧𝓁 demanded. There we go, jeez. "Of course, he just needs to rest." 𝓧𝓁 snorted and looked down at the motionless black shape. He jabbed Ravenpaw with one of his big front claws. "Come on then, get up." Ravenpaw didn't move. "Look at the length of that claw," Firepaw hissed. "Too right," replied Greypaw with feeling. "I know I wouldn't want to get into a fight with him." "Not so fast, 𝓧𝓁." Spotted Leaf placed her paw over 𝓧𝓁's sharp talon and gently moved it away. "This apprentice needs to be kept as still as possible, and cut has been healed. We don't want him opening his wound by jumping around trying to please you. Leave him alone." Firepaw found himself holding his breath as he waited for 𝓧𝓁's reaction. He guessed that a few cats dared to give him orders to a warrior like that. The big tabby stiffened and seemed about to speak when Spotted Leaf mewed teasingly. "Even you know better to argue with a medicine cat, 𝓧𝓁." 𝓧𝓁's eyes flashed at the little tortoiseshell's words. "I wouldn't dare argue with you, dear Spotted Leaf," he purred. He turned to leave and caught sight of Greypaw and Firepaw. "Who's this?" he asked Greypaw, towering above them. "He's the new apprentice," Greypaw mewed. "He smells like a kitty pet," snorted the warrior. "I was a